Right on time.
Yeah.
Professional.
Oh, is it already at the hour? Damn. Time flies.
Yeah.
Well,
Especially when we're not
having
recording.
fun. Right.
Yeah. So I read book 4. Justin fell an hour short in his audiobook of book 4. And
But I know
Andreas,
what happens. I mean, I'll
yeah,
finish it up.
you get like half points for having read the book beforehand, like years ago.
What kind of college grading? Hold on. When can I swear? BS is this? Like, oh,
Long enough.
you read like 95% of it. Therefore you get a D minus. Like,
Can you
oh, okay.
complete the essay question
And
on
this
the
is
exam?
my second read through, mind you. So it's you and Andreas that really need to be reading.
Hey, I've read them before.
Yeah, when you were 8?
No, when I was like
Right.
15.
Yeah. Same. So I'm definitely overdue for it. But yeah, like I miscounted the chapters or something. So I was like, it's getting down to the wire. And oh crap, there's a whole extra hour that I need to listen to. But was literally wrapping it up, 10 minutes ago, I thought. So, but
Did you get a haircut?
no.
You just brushed it for once.
It's natural. For once. Rude.
But true.
I've got this new HD camera, so I try to, at least run a brush through my hair before the show.
I was going to say, you're definitely looking paler than normal, so it's clearly picking up the details.
Yeah.
I actually just like looking at Justin's face now and having had videos recommended of some of our old videos. It's like he's a lot less red haired than he used to be, at least looking at the camera.
Well, at least he still has hair.
The hair is still wet, so it could be just darker than normal. But yeah, it's darkened over the years. So.
Yeah, especially the beard is what I'm noticing the most right now because I have a picture of your face like on YouTube like this morning
as his screensaver,
as like recommended up, and you had like a really red beard compared to now.
Yeah, the beard. I mean, it's grayer too. So
getting old, man.
Yep.
The ginger erasure is happening on our own podcast, not just Hollywood.
That's a thing?
There's like a picture of, if you see a lot of the race swap characters that used to be redhead pale people are now black. So people want to make that into a thing.
Right.
Which, I mean, it is kind of funny how many of them there are, but
yeah.
What are you going to do?
I guess no one's going to argue for ginger rights. So
well, they don't have rights. Yeah. They have no souls. What do you need to give them rights for?
Yeah.
Right. It's kind of all over the place, not to give any credence to that, but it's like the only one that like really made me mad, I think, was Triss. And like, it's not like I even have a horse in that race, but it's like she was a hot redhead. And that was one of the 3 things that I knew about The Witcher before the show came out. So like when they kind of recast her as, not a redhead, and I'm like, what the hell is this shit? And then of course, like the mermaid is another like prominent one, but I'm like third tier character on the one hand, that it's like she's literally only there for eye candy almost, and then like the star, so it's like, yeah, I mean, the star just happened to be a redhead.
Triss is more important than third tier character. She's a quite important secondary character.
Okay, so secondary character either way. It's not like like Yennefer is still kind of like she's almost primary, but it's like, very much Geralt's story, right? So
yeah, but
I'm just saying, like, so Yennefer even still is a second character, but it is so
not in my rankings, I guess.
Well, I'm not talking about. I'm not ranking her. I'm saying where she fits into the story, right? If the story is about Geralt from his point of view, he's the primary character. Yennefer's a really close second, but she's second, which means Triss is third. That's all I'm saying. If we want to, fight about it, but like,
yeah, fight about it.
Fight about it another day.
So speaking of third-rate characters,
Andreas,
I don't know how that's they referenced Tom Bombadil. Did you all catch that?
What's the not a protagonist, the secondary protagonist of the
deuteragonist.
Yeah, that's me.
Yeah.
Justin is the protagonist. He's the one everybody
Right?
comes
Does
here
that
for.
make you my sidekick? Like,
Yeah, you're Robin. Robin to Batman.
right?
Yep.
This is getting weird, but okay. So
We
So
all
that
know
makes-
everybody comes here for you, Justin.
Right.
Let's not
And
pretend.
no, they come here for the dual
Not really sure
relationship
about
because
all that,
I'm the
but-
antagonist, so it goes back and forth.
yeah.
The director is the narrator who fucks everything up in the story.
Oh goodness.
And then there's
very-
that other guy that comes sometimes.
Bombadil, who comes in and sings songs.
And his boots are yellow.
So one thing about book 4, I think there was only like 3 songs. much less than before. And I mean the rest of the small books.
Well, see, they're in Mordor now. Not really a singing country, so you know.
Well, that's just because they don't know black
Like-
speech, which is kind of racist on their part if they're going to go there and not learn the songs.
Okay, but anyway, yeah, I was definitely thinking like we should have had more like the orcs like marching on the road and be like, "That's life, living on the chain, gay." No, okay. Anyway,
Yeah,
I'm
right.
not a singer, but yeah, that's
No, you're not,
translated
but that
directly
dude-
from orc tongue,
Chain Gang would have been a good song from Mordor, I think.
right? Like there are songs
And
that would
Hi
fit
Ho,
orcs.
the dwarf song.
Mm.
from
Hi
Sure.
ho.
I just feel like that would be appropriation because there are dwarves, so
Well, that's again part of what they lost. They lost Moria, they lost Erebor, and they lost that song in the war.
those evil orc bastards, they even appropriated our songs.
Hi-ho.
Sons of bitches must
Hi-ho.
pay.
It's off to man flesh we go, or something.
All right.
It could be done.
I mean, it could be done. I'm not sure it should be done, So,
I would like to point out the most disappointing point is that looks like meat is back on our menu, boys. Just not here.
Yeah.
Not present.
it's
Yeah,
it's a
it is
movie
just-
line, right? So
Right.
It's a
Yeah.
good movie line. And then there were so many other
Yeah.
really good movie lines that actually did come from the books. I was hoping that it would be true.
yeah, like the
So I've always agreed that it begs the question. It's like, what kind of menus do orcs have that they're just
Yeah.
reasonably aware of that? But whatever.
Well, clearly their menu was Magdy bread, meat. So, like they're like the opposite of Lent, right? They give up meat all the time and then they get it every Friday for 40 days. So,
They weren't very happy about that.
yeah.
Oh, imagine if they were Lent, like if they were half Jewish too, so it was during Passover, so they couldn't even eat the maggoty bread or the meat.
Just
They get one day where they could eat a meal.
Yeah. I definitely feel like eating orc is not kosher, right? Too close to pork, but
Can't you just put some cream cheese on it?
That
I'm
definitely makes
not
it
sure
not
that
kosher.
improves it. Yeah,
don't know.
right.
That's the only Jewish stereotype I know is
It's the
lots of
opposite
cream
of making
cheese.
it kosher.
It's the
Right,
bagel
because
thing.
mixing cheese and meat, right? Like,
I was gonna say, I like how that's the stereotype. Cream cheese on a bagel. That's a Jewish thing, not
And
just
cream
in every
cheese, no,
person
cream
who
cheese
eats
on a bagel with salmon lox.
Yes,
Like,
lox.
that's
very tasty.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, we have a lot of salmon here, so
Well, fish
Bagels
and
still
dairy,
aren't
quote
allowed on
unquote,
Passover.
is fine.
yeah, because fish doesn't count as meat for some reason, right? I would
don't
really
see
like to
that.
talk to the people that decided that
my internet
like
just
so
go-
long
Well,
ago.
that's
I feel like
quite a
that's one of
weird
those like
history.
it's a loophole because I will get killed if we don't put a loophole in here because
gonna
Well,
say,
there's tons of
a
loopholes
not
because
very
it's
good
like,
rule.
well, that thing is tasty, but the people writing the book in Israel 2,000 years ago didn't know what a seal was, and so I'm going to call it a fish. Yeah, I don't know.
I mean,
I've seen
if
some
you want to
videos
go
like
through
that.
the effort of eating a seal, feel free. But I feel like there are more loopholes we could probably prod these
I think
people if we
beavers
went
also
back in
count
time
as
for.
fish.
I'm sorry, did you just say beaver?
Yeah, I think so because I've seen some random videos about this of like what people were trying to eat during the holiday times of old, and like you have to stick to whatever the holiday rules were or the religious rules. And there's some random ones that were just like, no, this is a fish for some reason. And then,
I think I could just live with
If we-
seafood and not worry about a beaver.
right. If we continue down this, I'm going to get into trouble. So Lord of the Rings, you guys are all trying to figure out where I was. So let's see.
I'm just thinking about how we can
Look-
turn the Watcher into water and giant calamari now. That's what I would like to know.
I
He
mean,
could feed the orcs
obviously,
for a while.
if they had defeated him, but the Watcher was beyond any of use, so we had to run inside Moria, and then of course the Balrog is beyond any of use, so we got to run from that, and then
Well, yeah, you notice how Gandalf is keen to fight the Balrog because he's the wielder of the flame of Arnor, whereas the Watcher in the water was water, so he wouldn't have gotten any XP from that. But killing another flame demon,
he would have taken double damage, so
right.
it would have been probably still would have gotten XP, but then he wouldn't have been ready for the Balrog. So.
The problem was they sent Bill off too soon. Bill could have kicked the shit out of the thing.
Oh, for sure. He would have grabbed the tentacle and started swinging him around. Okay, so anyway, that was many books ago. So book 4,
Book 4.
We got past
Frodo and Sam and Gollum and Faramir.
We're past the Battle of Helm's Deep. We're now into Mordor, which has a lot more flowers than I remember. I kind of liked the feel because in the book, because it's got a desolate feel without it necessarily being like this place is a desert ravaged by fire and sand and shit, right? Because that's what you get out of the movies. Like the most plant life you get is around the bogs, and mostly like the plants tried to grab you and pull you under and kill you. Wait, no, those were just corpses. But it's like you get like the grasses like around the bogs and stuff like that, but they actually like find veils and stuff, and the whole like, oh, this is Mordor and it's bad because the men used to tend the gardens here and now it's unruly, which is probably like Sam's nightmare, right? Because it's like a garden that's been untended for thousands of years, but it's like it's not, literally there's rocks and ash and orcs in the movies, right? It's all just like volcanic land or whatever. Whereas, we actually get a couple of places and it's like, oh, this is where they fill up their water for the last time before Frodo spills it all on his chin trying to drink it. And this is where, like they get food because they didn't have enough limbus bread, which is also funny because that's kind of like manufactured for the movie as well, isn't it? The whole like Gollum spilling the limbus bread and framing Sam for it, because I kept waiting for that, and it's like they don't care because they got conies, and then Faramir gives them a ton of provisions, and so they actually get like real food, and they get a nice little respite that isn't really covered in the movie. Like they go to the secret cave and whatever, like in the extended edition, I think. And they have the whole like, hey, we're going to shoot him if you don't know who he is. Right. And then Frodo's like, okay. I kind of know who he is. But they don't talk about like giving them all the food and the water and that they're there for a couple of days resting, which really kind of like takes the edge off a little bit of their journey. I think, the movie is so much more brutal about that, but
yeah, the movie held a lot more like high tension of like, oh my god, this thing that's happening. And I mean, with Faramir, it wasn't not tense in the book because there was the possibility that he's going to try to take the ring, or what is he going to? Is he going to force them to go to Minas Tirith instead of allowing them to go on to Mordor? And they only stayed with him for, I think, like maybe up to 18 hours or something, because they found him at the campsite. And then they went with him that night to wherever they were staying, and then he gave them food that morning, I thought.
I don't know. I got the impression it was a lot longer than that, because it's like after the battle, right? He basically keeps them camped down for a couple of hours while he gets his people back together, and they finish off whatever else, and they're running around, so they get a little bit of sleep then, I think. And then, they get marched back. And even that I thought took a long time. So like I wouldn't go less than 3 days, but like 18 hours, like maybe, I don't know, maybe in the cave, like initially or something like that. But Sam gets like 2 bouts of sleep, I think, right? Because he goes to sleep, he gets woken up by, the Gollum thing, I think. And then they're like, okay, well, we're going to sleep and eat again in the morning. And it does get a little bit confusing because, like I was confused by the timing anyway, just because it was like, we ate, we slept, we woke up, then Faramir ate, and now we got to eat again, but, cause they make a big deal about like, everybody eats when the captain eats type of stuff, so, but
that was like dinner when they returned to camp. And then everyone slept, and Faramir didn't sleep because he was awake, being unhappy about everything, and his brother being dead.
As you do.
I think that's an interesting read on the thing. But
well, he wasn't just dwelling on his unhappiness. He was like, he has problems that are impossible to solve, and it's stressing him out, and so he's staying up to think to try to find an answer.
He pulled the classic captain move. He passed the buck, right? Because multiple times he's like, I'm going to haul you guys all the way back to Minas Tirith, and I'm going to make Denethor decide because he's in charge around here. And he eventually makes the right call and whatever. But there's at least 2 or 3 references where he's like, if I don't take you to Minas Tirith, they're going to kill me, which is a funny relationship to have with your dad. But
yes.
Well, they do. They at least allude to that in the movie too. The whole your life is forfeit if you let them go.
Right.
After they've already made the meta commentary about how they're not supposed to be in Osgiliath.
Right. Yeah. By rights, we shouldn't even be here, which is, I think, my favorite line out of the trilogy as far as that sort of thing goes. I mean, it's up there with that's my axe twitching in his nervous system and, small chance of survival. What are we waiting for? Like, those are also great, but for a non-Gimli line, it's pretty freaking good. So,
Oh, even a line said to Gimli, would you like me to describe it to you, or shall I find you a box?
Right. Also great, yes. So,
that reminds me of the way that the storylines broke off from each other. So book 3 is focused only on Aragorn, Legolas, Gimli, and all of that, and the separation from Frodo to Sam. It's like the days and keeping them in track with each other is hard when they're separated like that. So the movie, like, mashing them all together again of like, here's what happened more or less in order, helps a lot.
Yeah, I suppose, right? It keeps them a little bit more lockstep so that you're not like, wait, that was last book. Where are we now? Because you have a very hard split between, the action, really, and then what Frodo and Sam are doing. So,
well, it was like the last 2 books of Game of Thrones, because it was split. So you get one half of the world doing this, and then you go to the second book, and it's like at the same time here on this side.
Yeah, but how are these things affecting each other? Like how, like the timing of when did Boromir die, and how did Faramir learn of it? And Frodo had not heard that Boromir was dead yet because he left before that. It's like, obviously it was a shock, and it can kind of be a shock to the readers if you had forgotten about it. But it's only was 4 or 5 days. 9 days, maybe up to
it. Yeah, it was a while again because you had just the montage of the 3 of them running across Rohan. That's 3 days in book 3, I think. So it's.
Well, it says it in the movie too, right? That's Gimli's line: is 3 days and nights pursuit, no food, no rest.
Yeah. Right. So. Yeah. So you get to set that up, but yeah, I would say it's pretty close to 2 weeks, but definitely 9 days on the low end, probably, or maybe that's right. But yeah, I mean, whatevs. It is, but it is interesting because Faramir trying to catch him out on whether or not he's a spy or if he was really a friend and what was going on, because Frodo keeps hedging and making these sideways glances and stuff, and Faramir's not an idiot, which is one of the things that I liked about Faramir. Between that and the contrast with his brother, that he's like, hey, I don't even want to touch that. Like, I'm not nearly as noble a guy as my brother was, and if he fell to it, I'm not even going to entertain it, which coincidentally made Faramir even more noble in my mind, by doing it. But yeah, so, but yeah, it is kind of interesting trying to line it up with when they left Boromir, he was alive, a little bit crazy, but he was alive, and Frodo being saddened by it, but not nearly as sad as Gandalf still, whom he still thinks is dead, by the way, you know, but.
Well, I mean, Gandalf didn't try and... I guess you could make the argument Gandalf has tried to kill him by sending him out on this quest in the first place, but... really, he didn't really, in the same way Boromir was looking to hurt him.
Right.
So. Oh yeah. The movies are a lot closer for me, but I've always found Two Towers to be the least enjoyable of the 3 books in general.
Why?
Yeah,
because I
interesting.
was never a big fan of Sam and Frodo in general as their whole until the end. So that still
So you
hasn't really
missed the
changed.
entire point of the trilogy then? Gotcha. So
No,
like Tolkien's about to be like a generator, like an electric generator by spinning in his grave fast enough to just
listen. If Rings of Power didn't make him do it, my comment about not really liking Frodo and Sam's not going to do it.
Frodo and Sam's the point of the trilogy. Like that's why I'm saying it. Like
yeah, that's
Sam
fine.
being the hero of this
Guess
era
what?
and all of that. But
Will and Elizabeth are the point of the Pirates of the Caribbean trilogy. I still don't like them compared to Jack.
I mean, when compared to Jack. So if you're comparing Frodo and Sam to Gimli, of course.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying. Like
as far as entertainment value, that's
I appreciate and understand the point of their story and the point that they are the point of the story, but reading their parts to me was always, and that hasn't really changed as time went on, was just like, it's not as engaging to me as the rest of it.
Right. Well, and I think what people get lost on, it's like, come on, like especially talking to an American audience, right? We have literal castle siege with 10,000 orcs, angry trees, a sassy wizard with a rap battle with a lesser wizard. The king gets resurrected practically, right? He's a walking corpse anyway. And then you've got Frodo and Sam are super excited that they found 2 rabbits, right? Like we have literally exploration and road travel to compare that against, right? And just kind of the banter between them and, oh man, is Gollum going to help them, or it's totally telegraphed that he's trying to murder them, up to the point where it's like he has a different coloration in his eyes when he's being sneaker, right? When he's running around causing trouble, which is like the part that I just read the whole like, oh, there you are, sneaker, or whatever. And it's like, oh, always such polite hobbits and all this other stuff, right? And it's just like that's the big drama of book 4, is whether or not Gollum's going to off him and when. And it's like, I mean, that gets telegraphed like so early in the book. So yeah, I mean, from like a pacing perspective and all of this stuff, yeah, I get it. Like, would you rather watch super cool, siege battle, or 2 hobbits running around with their would-be murderer catching rabbits lying around in roses, So,
I mean, I think that's what ended up leading to the decision to put them in Osgiliath, was to sort of combat that a little bit, would be my guess. That, we need a little bit of something here to, because the character stuff with Faramir is great in the movie anyway, but if there's, it sort of gives both of them room, because so he's about to essentially take the ring at that point. And then Osgiliath's under attack, so it's like, all right, so here we have a break, but it's unresolved. And then what's the decision going to be? And then you put them in that scenario where they could theoretically get caught again. And it's more dynamic, I guess is the word you would use.
Right. Which is funny because like to pick on a section of the audience by picking on Ben, who can't defend himself, right? Like he's talking about how boring book 4 is, but how dare the movies sexy up Lord of the Rings? And it's like, so you get it and don't get it at the same time, right? Because you're like, oh, the book 4 is the most boring book because nothing happens. Exactly. And so you're going to be mad at them for making the movies much more action oriented. Like, could you imagine sitting through 12 hours of the marathon of all the extended editions, but it's book accurate? And so 2 of those hours is you watching Frodo and Sam's banter as Gollum catches them 2 rabbits and they talk to Faramir. And it's just like, obviously the battle stuff is going to keep people engaged and in their seats more, right? So leaning into that, it doesn't really do the books disservice, because like, let's just say we didn't get book 4. Let's say we got a chapter of like, oh man, wasn't it so hard when we had to scale that cliff and Gollum almost got shot in the ass because he was fishing in the forbidden waters. And, like, would we really have lost that much of the story? Pacing would have been wildly different, but But do you think you could have boiled book 4 down into a couple of chapters, maybe? That would have been so much more entertaining. Something along the lines, and then Gandalf fucked off for 17 years and came back with an answer, right? It's not like we haven't done time skips.
Coincidentally, he too got shot in the ass.
Right. He more like he fell on it, but so.
It isn't a different thing that was trying to be shown with Frodo and Sam in book 4 of partially it's just the toll that's being taken on Frodo the whole time. And so if you skip over all of that change, you miss it. You can't exactly do Gandalf fucked up for 17 years and comes back and have that change. It's more impactful. But
you can still boil it down to a couple of sentences like, Frodo hasn't slept more than 8 hours in a fortnight. Boom, sentence written.
I mean, honestly, I think the travel descriptions in book 1 was more like detailed and unnecessary than in book 4. There was a lot less description of the lines, and so it was more about their emotional journey. And so I think that's why it was so much easier to read. Like, I was surprised at how fast I read through it and how enjoyable it was when it was more about, like, is Frodo okay? And he's definitely not, but he's holding on way better than anyone else could. The Gollum-Smeagol dichotomy. But every time that Sam wants to be mean to him, then Frodo says, but we should give him grace for valid reasons. And it's like that was actually what book 4 was about and not necessarily about the travel. So you can't skip through that too quickly.
Right. No, and I agree. I'm being a little bit facetious and that sort of thing, but it's like you're like with that attitude because like I'm calling it out because I've seen it in some of the subreddits and things like that too, right? It's not just a Ben thing. Ben's just kind of like he's one of our crew that has a similar kind of opinion where it's like you can't have it both ways, right? Like we either got to go on this emotional journey, which is gonna suck because it sucked for them, and that's the point. And you've got to just enjoy that as part of the story, or you got to just, accept the fact that the alternative is it's kind of really like a huge chunk of this is a war story, even though the war isn't the important part of the outcome. It's happening alongside this, right? You can't not tell that part either. You can't not talk about 10,000 orcs sieging, Helm's Deep. You can't not talk about the army that just marched out of Minas Morgul to go end men, basically, is what it, turns out to be in the movie and all of that other stuff, right? They're going to drop Osgiliath. And like, in a sense, like these hobbits are using the war as a smokescreen, which is exactly what Gandalf is doing. Gandalf is like, oh my God, look at the giant fucking distraction over here in Minas Tirith. Don't you want to smash me in the face? As Frodo and Sam just sneak in to Mordor and do the actual quest. They're both very important parts of the story, but obviously sneaking isn't exactly sexy and cool compared to,
That's not how you do it.
Theoden shouting death for 25 minutes as the last Ride of the Rohirrim kicks off, and they go smash themselves into a bunch of elephants. Like even Faramir's crew being like, yeah, there's like probably 10 of us, and we just took out like 500 dudes because we're badass rangers. Like that's still even more, entertaining than, Gollum singing about fish and whatever else is going on. So it's like, I mean, I get it, but I'm just saying, like, it's just funny when the people that complain about the slow pacing of that section also complain about how they focused on the fighting, and maybe I'm misrepresenting or whatever, but I wanted to call that out because it's like, yeah, to me, it's fine. It's like the cost of admission. Right. It's like, this is the story. And if you want to see the cool battles, you've got to understand why those battles are happening, which is a big freaking distraction because Sauron can only look at so many things. And he's mostly looking at, Gandalf because he thinks Gandalf and Aragorn have the ring, because why wouldn't they? That's what he would do, and you get those little tidbits, from Gandalf as we're going through. So, but.
Mm-hmm. That and Gandalf's less prettier.
Sure. I mean, he's taller, less whiny, has immense cosmic power that he can't use, but...
Right. Well, he can. You just would have to go evil.
What's the quote from, or maybe it's only in Danish, but in Aladdin, the
Yeah.
genie.
Phenomenal cosmic power, itty bitty living space.
Yes.
Yep.
Except in his case, it's phenomenal cosmic power, itty bitty little hobbitses.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of like he can't do anything on his own. All he can do is help them on their way, much like Uriel.
Yeah, but his beard's better.
Yeah.
I mean,
his beard is better.
Yeah. I don't think we get to it until, I mean, clearly we're not going to get to it until Return of the King, but he does kind of like show down with, the Witch King a little bit, at least in the movie. And, it's kind of interesting about that because the Witch King should not be on Gandalf's level, but he's certainly, like in the movie, breaks his staff and whatnot. And I don't remember how book accurate that is. So I'm kind of hedging here. But that'll be kind of interesting to see if how much of that plays out in the book and whatnot. Yeah,
I don't remember Return of the King movie as well as I do the other ones. I just haven't watched it as often as many times I've seen Two Towers.
Bummer.
Yeah, but it will be interesting if we continue with the books, and then I'll actually be surprised when we watch the movie again.
Right. Yeah, as much as I like the Battle of Helm's Deep and all of that is fantastic, and I love the Hurons and the charge, at dawn and everything. Like Minas Tirith is a fucking siege. We're like epic fantasy, hurling buildings at each other. I'm talking movie wise, at least, where it's just like Minas Tirith is a castle. Like the whole thing is built into a mountain and just all of this stuff. They're not the Rohirrim that are like, hey, we cobbled together some chainmail, that's cool, right? Like every single one of their guards is in like full plate, and all
what do you mean you can't eat rocks,
right?
And horse meat.
So, yeah, Denethor will be interesting to see in the book. He was great in the movie to John Noble, and it's so crazy unhinged. One of my favorite parts of the movie. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how he actually is in the books and whether they spiced him up to be more unhinged in the movie, which I wouldn't be surprised
right.
But
probably. I mean, but visually is always going to have that advantage when you can see the person's face and hear them versus the text.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, he was cuckoo pants. Yeah. I mean, but it's also hard to portray that as much when you're also doing sort of the ye old English dialogue a little bit. We're a little less I could believe that Denethor in the movie would have dropped an F-bomb if we were in a different setting.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I think any of the kings would have, like maybe not Aragorn, depending, unless of course the whole then I'll fucking die as one of them. I think that would be an appropriate place for that. But Theoden's dropping F-bombs like every other sentence.
Would you like me to describe it for you, or shall I get you a fucking box?
Right. Yeah.
My axe, because it's his fucking nervous system. So you can just.
Very good placement.
I know. It's natural, man. It's all over the place. But you want to hear them whine about, crassing up Lord of the Rings, though. So. But yeah, I'd have to go back through Theoden's speech, but I'm sure he could drop an F-bomb in there. I don't think fucking death has the same ring to it, but I'm sure somewhere in there.
For fucking Frodo?
That was
that's Aragorn.
I mean, it would be now for wrath, now for ruin, and the red fucking
something
dawn.
Like that. So
that would probably work. Yeah. Or the fucking red dawn.
A sword day, a fucking day. And then you've got right a little bit later, Gimli's like, that still fucking only counts as one.
Even in the mad about it. Even in the camp, it's like, can we defeat the armies of Mordor? No, but we will meet them in battle none the fucking less.
Well done.
I like that one.
I don't know, just thinking of the Oliphant, I guess I'm glad that they weren't oversized just for the movie, because I always thought they were great when I was a kid, that he did actually describe them as being that large and that crazy sounding. And right. Of the 3 songs in book 4, they got one of them. That's important.
Right. Well, was it a song or a rhyme? I don't know, but close enough.
A children's song.
So, yeah.
Ryan,
yeah,
it's just
they,
a
I mean,
song without ego.
Yeah.
they described the towers and everything like that, which I think very long ago during my first read, I missed some of that because it's like, oh, oliphants are elephants, right? And so I'm just thinking it's an elephant, maybe the size of a house. And when I saw them in the movie the first time, and I was like, oh, those are so much bigger than I expected, But they actually do talk about how basically, like, the Dunedain like knock one of the towers loose and it just like rampages off into the wilderness or whatever. And it's like, yeah, that's force of nature we're not dealing with. We're here for the soldiers, So, but
yeah, the little ambush that Faramir and his people do to that Oliphant in that moment is very, very book accurate, as I remember from the movie. So they're perfect. And the Haradrim in general, like, I thought they were always cool looking. I'm glad that they were actually described that way, so it was accurate. Of like all the black and the red and all the gold piercings. It's very exotic. It's very weird. I don't know. I like weird.
well, especially because you're comparing it to like the Rohirrim and Gondor again, where they're very just medieval standard, right? Like you could pick up those kingdoms and drop them somewhere in European history, whereas like the blacks and the gold and the red, and it gives them a much more maybe a Persian feel or something like that, where it's just much more southern and eastern, and I'm sure he's doing some of that too, where it's like Hannibal, for example, like he rode elephants into battle and, just all this other, but it's much more ancient Roman history rather than, medieval European. But yeah.
No, luckily the Romans came to conquer Britain too. So, you can go back to
close
that.
enough. Yeah. So, but yeah, and it's stuff like this that made me really like the Rangers, because I remember thinking like, oh, Aragorn's such a badass, it'd be so cool to see more of them. Spoilers, there's more of them. Yeah, and they're all just about as badass, like they're not all carrying some epic sword that's thousands of years old and got reforged and shit, and they're not all kings, but like they're all very badass, and lurking around in the woods, just generally giving Mordor a bad day, where they can. So,
yeah, that's like Faramir's whole job: give Mordor a bad day.
Right.
It's a good job. It's worth having.
Yeah, worth having. Yeah, and keeps him away from his crazy father.
That is a bonus.
Yeah.
I'd rather almost die to them than almost die to you.
Yeah, pretty much.
So what was so special about that pool that Gollum got into? They just kept saying that like to get in there is death, and it's just like, but why?
Right.
I always got the impression that, well, yeah, it could either be legend, or I always got the impression that he was just kind of like playing that up to give him an excuse to shoot him.
It's also possible.
Yeah, I mean,
Faramir to lie though.
So, like, Gondor used to own most of the land in this area, right? So, I just got the impression it was like an old sacred grove. Like, I thought they mentioned something about, like, the old kings used to go there or some nonsense. But it was also very useful for them because it was very well fortified, right? Obviously, like, they probably did some of that with, like, the knives, stone bits, and whatever. Like, that seemed pretty deliberate. But the fact that it was, like, one way in, one way out, other than falling to your death into the pool of spikes, it was super defensible for him, but that seemed as much convenience as the fact that it was just like ancient, like they had old laws about it or something like that. So it's one of those things, like his world building is super cool and kind of interesting and yet very thin when you're reading the Lord of the Rings, in the sense that it's like he hints at all the depth of the world, but you get so precious little of the details of it, right? Because he talks about how, the people of Gondor used to own this entire section, and that's why the gardens are here, and that's where the towers came from, and all of this other stuff. But yeah, but it all, it all fell to ruin because the men stopped caring, because it's been thousands of years, and that's way past the memory of men. That's past multiple dynasties of men and things like that, and yet like they still kind of know, so I don't know. It's all super interesting, but I think it'd be fun, to just see if there's like a histories of Middle Earth that takes place with like Gondor at its height, and just be like, yeah, we're pretty much a police state for the orcs. It's a thankless job, but somebody's got to do it, because that's kind of what those towers were there for. They were watching for Sauron's return. They spent a few thousand years and said, yeah, he's probably not coming back. And even Gandalf and Galadriel and a few others dared to hope until, they started realizing, crap, he's coming back. And, everybody stopped looking, 1,000 years ago, they stopped looking. So,
yeah. That's why him being an eye is ironic, because nobody else could see.
Nobody saw it coming.
Mm-hmm. He was John Cena the whole time. They couldn't see him. That'd be hilarious. Somebody's got to do that mashup where like his eye comes into being and it just plays the John Cena theme music. Yep.
Guys are nerds.
Yeah,
I don't think
surprising.
that counts.
I think it does. It's okay.
Wrestling is not
nerdy.
Wrestling is in addition to being fake is not really the province of nerds as I remember from my childhood.
I think it's evolved past that, right? Like classically you're correct, but you can be nerds about a lot of different things, right? Like the people who do all the, face painting and body painting and go to football games, those are also nerds, even though traditionally you'd think like, oh, they're jocks or some nonsense like that. Like
nerd is a state being.
Yeah, like
just a different kind of nerd.
So yeah. I think they had a website for a while. I don't know if it's still there, but it's like Geek About or whatever, where it was just like, what are you a geek about? And then, it was like, if you get super into the details and all of this other stuff about being nerdy about something, then, it counts. So
there's this joke from, what's this? Is it Bill Burr? Bald guy. Kind of, yeah.
We know who Bill Burr is. We're waiting for the joke to see if it is, in fact, his joke or not.
Talking about how women are losing to men, and women go past the sports bar, and he's like, that's what you're losing to with them bumping stomachs and paint on the face. Yeah.
Yes, that is his bit.
Yeah. That's what I thought about when he brought up the sports nerds.
Yeah.
Have you seen there's a bit on YouTube where it's he thinks fantasy football means it's not Bill Burr, it's just a sketch where he thinks fantasy football is you take football, real people, and you make D&D characters for them, and you mix it up, and that's fantasy football.
I'm sure somebody has done that many times.
Yeah, that's not even that far off the mark. The problem is that the character isn't a person, the character is the team. That's the fantasy part of fantasy football, right? Like you still got all the stats and the performance and everything like that, but you're using, virtualized real people based off of their stats and performance to build a team and hope that you win. That's the nerd part of it. Like,
yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's not really a thing here, or at least not in my friend groups.
Sports.
I have no idea what it really entails.
I have a bunch of friends, tangentially that play it, but I got no interest in it. I'm not that kind of nerd. So, but like I might be down for like a orcs versus wizards style of fantasy football where,
yes. I can understand that
some
better.
40K stuff going on, right? But yeah, like I got no interest in like being gaga over like whichever quarterback is hot this season and which of his teammates and all of this stuff that and he got injured, so our team can't play this week, and that's a level of logistics that I don't get into, So
I do.
And I do it on the mark on anything because I'm mostly just an observer.
Do it for money too. So there.
Oh yeah. Like a lot of money, or you're playing dollars? Because a lot of my groups are like, we'll put in $5 or whatever. But
100 buy-in.
Nice.
So I think there's 14 of us, so it's a decent amount that you could.
That's enough to
Right. It's not so much that it's like, I can't afford that. And then if you're any good at it, okay.
So are you any good at it?
Yeah, I've won 3 times. Well, 3.5. We split this last season because of injury. That last game that I'm sure all of you have even heard about, where the guy almost died on the field.
Oh yeah.
Right.
So we were playing in the championship game. He was up by 30 points with 1 player left on one of the teams, and I had 2, including the quarterback and the running back, who are big point scorers. So either one of us could have made the argument to winning, but the game got canceled and never got rescheduled. So we were whatever. So we we're like, let's just split it. We'll split the money, and that'll be that.
Nice.
So I now have 2.5 wins over, I think it's 10 years now.
See, I should be able to follow this, but I think literally just because it's sports and a ball, like I can't. If you put it with wizards and spells, I would be able to. It's like I can pay attention to history, but I'm going to kind of forget it. But if you put it into like a historical fiction story, I'll remember it for forever. I just think, I don't know.
Well,
I have tried for my whole life to understand my dad's obsession with football. I remember being very confused as a child. Like, what, you're doing fantasy football? What does that mean? And it just like,
yeah. Well, because like that's most of what everybody gets is we're playing fantasy football. End of explanation, right? You either understand it or you don't. And it was finally kind of realizing that it's like, oh, you guys are drafting your own teams, and then you're looking at their stats and performance, week after week, and that's somehow shaping your team's performance and whether or not you go to the Super Bowl and all of that nonsense. And so like it really becomes, it's so to be fantasy, and to put it in different terms, right? Instead of a team, you're building a squad. You're not building a character. You're not building a, like a captain and be like, oh yes, my captain has so much strength or charisma or inspiration or whatever. You're just drafting, cards that represent people more.
You're trying to assemble the best group of NPCs you can, and
correct,
win,
and then see how they perform. And so like where it gets super nerdy is that you have to get super deep into the stats of these guys, right? And you have to guess, what their performance is going to be, and they go through their own drafts and all of this other stuff, right? And so like when you are playing fantasy football, you're taking on the role of a coach, more or less, or it is coach, right? Like there's another word that escaped my mind, but it's like you're the manager, you're managing the team, right? So you've got to draft your people and deal with all of this stuff, and you've got to care if they get injured, and if you've got a sub, you can do trades and swap outs and all of this other stuff. And so it's a lot, and that's why I say it's nerdy, is because like cool, it's football, but it's way more into the stats of it, and it's way more into there's a lot more mind game stuff. Then it's not like they're going out on the weekend and throwing the ball, right? There is nothing sport related about it other than it is related to a sport. It's like advanced betting, right? Rather than saying like, oh, the Broncos are going to take the Super Bowl and here's $50 on the line or whatever. It's like, I'm going to make the Broncos go to the Super Bowl and here's $50 on it. So I don't know, but
in essence,
yeah.
Now imagine doing baseball, which is a daily one.
Yikes!
Because at least football is, there's a Thursday night game, sure, but generally speaking, it's all Sunday, Monday.
Right.
But I do baseball too because I have nothing to do with my life.
Apocalyptic wars in Middle Earth, like I am so out
so
of my
yeah. What happens is, so you obviously like. The Team Light is going to win, right? You drafted Faramir, Aragorn, Theoden, Gandalf is the captain. Shit, you've even got Merry and Pippin, right? But you just put them in a position where they can't do very much harm. They're mostly benched throughout the whole thing.
Yeah.
Getting closer? No?
Yeah, I need to fill up the bench.
I get battles. Like I've basically thinking of all of this and playing the Warhammer Total War games. It was like, yeah, but
right.
The point is at the end, my guys are alive and yours are dead. It's not like.
Well, you can think, first of all, one guy almost did die. So we got that going for us this year, which is nice.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Secondly, you can think of it that way if you want. You have slayed the other team. So,
right.
It's fine. You just picture them as corpses on the field, if that makes you feel better.
Because if you really get down to it, like there's a lot in football that overlaps with squad tactics and warfare anyway, right? So, if you just think about that and the maneuvers and whatever, it doesn't take a lot for you to, to like squint and rotate that a little bit to be more entertaining. And that's why, like, for me, I just like watching football for good plays, right? Like I'm long past caring about most of the individual players or the teams or anything like that. But, I can sit down and watch a game and root for good plays and shit like that. But I also don't have I don't put in the energy to get as excited as, the fantasy footballers with all of their stats and stuff. But yeah, so.
Yeah, pretty much. But that's okay. I can be the one who knows sports on this panel.
Yeah, that's fine. I think the other Jacob.
You can have Sean Bean on your team because then he'll die and you'll be down a player and then you'll lose.
He won't give you any points.
Defeats.
Well, if you do fantasy
before he dies.
If you do like a fantasy draft with the characters and stuff, can like a heroic death give you some sort of good point? Because that's what.
Well, like a 50 point bonus if your hero dies is a self-sacrifice type thing.
Yeah, something like that.
I guess you can get extra points for like a 50-yard touchdown or greater. So I suppose there's no reason you couldn't make it in this scenario that you get extra points for your heroic sacrifice.
I think it requires the pairing with Faramir, right? So like Boromir's sacrifice, like maybe there's a little bit of inspiration for Aragorn too, like you get like plus 10 points or something like that, but Faramir is the really big one that it's like if you didn't pair those two cards together, like it would be a waste, right? Because Boromir dies, nobody cares, and if Faramir's there, he doesn't get inspired unless Boromir dies.
Some sort of set bonus interaction, so if you draft both Boromir and Faramir gets plus something later when Boromir dies.
But then you fuck it up and you kill Faramir first accidentally. And then Boromir takes the ring and you get an automatic loss.
Right. Yeah. Faramir's like 2/3 of an Aragorn, until Boromir dies, and then they're almost equal, He becomes like 90% of Aragorn. He's still just missing the, not being a king and the epic sword, which the king thing doesn't happen until late game. So, you got to get there first. But yeah,
I feel like we got the start here of some sort of one of those card game building board games here. Like we should workshop this and make some money.
Yeah, we won't.
They have them. I have no idea, but they have them.
We're going to workshop this for like 17 hours and realize it's not actually a viable thing and then just stop.
Well, if you want to do it as Tolkien stuff, I'm sure you're just going to get sued by the Tolkien estate.
Oh, no, it's not Faramir, it's Aramir.
Right.
It's not Aragorn, it's Baragon.
Right. Just if you shift all of them by like one letter. Yeah, so...
Gandalf?
I always love running.
It's not Gandalf, it's Randolph.
Yeah.
Right.
It's perfect.
Yeah. I always love running into those in like other fiction where it's like, I'm like 90% sure you ripped this off and just changed like one letter or something, or maybe it was like subconscious. But like I always read, especially like, like more indie fiction type stuff where it's just like, this guy just like wrote a book and self-published it or whatever. I always like look at the names and be like, all right, how many letters off are we talking here? Because some of the science fiction stories or whatever, it's like it's not the Borg, it's the Zorg,
or when they go with generic names instead of brand names, or it's like weird, here's some Fizzy-Cola. It's like you would have come up with a name for this drink even in this universe. There's no doubt you would have. Stop lying to me.
There would be people arguing on Pepsi versus Coke even on Mars.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. An obscure reference that's a huge throwback that no one's going to get. Maybe Cody would, but like H. Beam Piper was one of my dad's favorite authors, and I think he was in the 50s or 60s, and like everything in his books was named as a a descriptor. And so like he was most well known for writing this book series about these fuzzies, which are basically like Ewoks, but they're called fuzzies because that's what they are. And then like one of the things that they have to deal with is basically like a wild boar or a targ that they just call a damn thing because that's what it is. It's a damn thing, and it's always like getting into the crops or killing the livestock or whatever. And so everything in his books are like that, where it's just like we stopped coming up with individualized names because there's just way too many things, so we just call them what they are, so
but at least that has some aspect of it where it's like, yeah, okay, I get you.
Yeah, people would do that.
Like on Coruscant, if you want to buy some death sticks, it's like, I mean, sure, but it's a little better.
Yeah. Look, man, I'm just trying to get high. I'm not trying to die today. Like so. No,
like you probably should work on your naming process on that a little bit. But and they were playing football in the background of that bar.
I was kind of curious
robots
about robot
were playing football.
Right. Almost more like foosball at that point. Yeah, it always felt like so. But
it's just like the logistics of robot football. Is it like different programming, like the Robot Wars, whatever? Is it how you build them? Is it what are the logistical requirements of like you cannot have these performance enhancing programs or something?
It comes down to the strategy, right? Like the strategy would be the differentiator probably, because like all things being equal, the robots are going to have the same reflexes, the same analysis, maybe theoretically, because maybe the manufacturer is different and there are different priorities or something. But, your defensive strategy versus their offensive strategy. So.
Well, AI's coming, so might as well we're getting there.
I much prefer like a Federation versus Klingon type of football where they've got spiky armor and batleths, and the Federation are just trying not to get killed. So
I was going to say that is not everybody. There's no way the Federation should win that unless you actually give them phasers.
It's agility versus strength types of stuff, right?
There's no way. Those squishy humans and none of them are agile. I've seen them all move.
There's Andorians and Vulcans in there too. Come on. Maybe it's Tellarite as, I don't know, something. But, yeah.
I don't think that would work out too well.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Dad had some art where he did hockey, actually. I was going to say, like, if it's hockey or football, there's no way the Klingons should lose. You could maybe get away with something like baseball with the Federation having some ability. And we saw that's canon, though. Worf played baseball, so that's where that whole death to the opposition line came from earlier. So, but
rugby. That would be another one where the Klingons would dominate.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Probably basketball, too, come to think of it. There's really not a sport they wouldn't. I think baseball's the only one the Federation would.
No, I'm pretty sure they would. Whatsoever, they're going to clean up, right? Yeah. Like that's what it comes down to.
I think they'd even do hockey, golf too.
It's a sweep, Like the only thing you might get them on hockey is if a few of them haven't been to what Rurapente is at the ice planet prison. So it's like if they're crying about the cold, you might get the Klingons there. Other than that, they're just going to start the fights because that's their favorite part of the game. They're like, we got a goal because we knocked out the opposing team, so this game is easy. Basketball, you're gonna have fouls and body contact all over the place, but baseball, like there still is some contact. Like they're going to take a swing at you every time you try to go for a base, but it's not really a contact sport, so
golf
like
would be interesting.
I think they would just
the Klingons could outdrive everyone, but I don't know that they could putt very well. So the Federation
What's really
might catch
interesting
up.
Is like, do you think they could beat the Scots? Like the fact that it's a Scottish sport is a little weird, So
I was going to say it depends. Like if your rugby team, for instance, is a bunch of Australians against the Klingons, and if your hockey team is a bunch of Russians and Canadians against the Klingons, and if your golf team is a bunch of Scots, like these are some equalizers in a loose way. But then you don't really have a federation. You just have a bunch of people that are better than the federation at one given thing.
Right.
Which is fine. I'm okay with that.
I feel like the Vulcans would clean up in golf because it's a lot more angles and precision type of stuff.
Tennis too.
So, but sure, yeah. Like in tennis, there's some strategy about tells and stuff like that too, though, and the Vulcans would not have any. They would just be like, they would purposefully misdirect maybe where they'd be like, I'm looking over here, but I can perfectly hit it over there. And
I guess what about ping pong? It's like, because it's condensed down.
Same thing.
Okay,
right.
I think the Vulcans would still.
Yeah.
Bowling.
I don't think the Klingons would do very well at ping pong.
I don't know how did we get into this conversation? I'm just going to throw out
sports.
You
brought it up.
You couldn't deal with sports being sports. You wanted more fantasy elements, and then I
did not start this.
I mean, kind of.
Badminton. That's another one that Klingons probably.
How much different is that from?
Yeah.
I guess someone's going to be mad.
Very. Have you seen that stupid thing? And you get the doinky little rackets instead of a real one. Like, that shit's annoying. Okay, well, we made it an episode. Congratulations, everyone. Most of it was even about Lord of the Rings.
Right. When we hit the 30-minute mark, and I was like, you could really boil down this entire book into a couple of chapters. I'm like, shit, I did it. I boiled it down to a couple of chapters. And
you ruined it.
Now we don't have anything to talk about. Yeah.
Well, I mean, we had Andreas here who was really keeping us on track the whole time. Even though I'm pretty sure he's still reading the book right now in his lap.
Don't be so hasty on that one. So 2 weeks we're doing the movie though. So that'll be more fun. And next week we're still doing more casting.
Yeah, we have more people to argue about.
Yeah. But we're getting down to the wire on that one at least. So
allegedly.
How much arguing do you expect out of some of this? Like, I expect a lot.
Yes and no.
Yeah, great. Half an episode arguing about Marcone. I can't wait. The other half of the episode arguing about Harry that spills over into a third episode.
I was going to say Marcone should be easy. Everybody who we couldn't cast as what we wanted is now Marcone. So we just have every episode he changes actors.
But you've got 30 people written down between the two characters, and only one of them can be cast.
You just change them every episode. It's easy.
Guess
it feels like.
You remember when Heath Ledger died and that movie came out, and then they casted his character like with 6 other people because they didn't have enough footage?
No, they just put it to Colin Farrell. It was just one person.
No, I thought they did. It was like Johnny Depp was in it for a few minutes, and other people.
I don't remember that. I only saw that movie once a really long time ago.
I don't even know what it is.
I've never did. It was like Mr. Megorium's Wonder Emporium or some shit.
I think.
Yeah.
I
didn't ever watch that one. But
neither did I.
Interesting.
I just remember that was what happened is he died, and they were like, "Yeah, we're gonna cast like 4 more people and fill in the roles."
I mean, that's just kind of born out of necessity, as opposed to like, what they're doing in the Fantastic Beasts, which is like, we're just going to keep rotating the actors because he's a shapeshifter. Isn't that cool? So.
Well, this is out of necessity for us so that we can A, stop arguing, and B, use that $1 billion budget we were given for casting alone.
Also, they got it right. They got it right.
We've solved it. Next episode, we're done. Then
yes,
next
exactly.
episode, we're just we're casting literally everybody, and we're just going to rotate them through every couple of episodes, however many we have actors for.
Correct.
Okay.
We've solved it.
That's terrible for the podcast. Thank you.
Listen, if you can boil down Lord of the Rings to 5 sentences, I can boil down our next podcast to nothing. There, I've one-upped you.
No.
I did it.
We need content, man. Like, unless you've been sitting on the book, you've got an ARC that you're not.
We don't need content. They need
content.
Because we could just do not we. The director could just do another Gears, Guns, and Gadgets, and then we could all shoot ourselves.
You'll be happy to know I do not have the brain power to do anything like that right now. So not on the table.
Yes, right now, quote unquote. Okay, so
next week we'll have some form of an argument.
Yeah. Go give us money, please. Thank you, Cody. Since
and if you have given us money, why have you not followed the links? Still, people, I have sent you the link. Why have you not joined Discord?
They don't want to
Very
talk to
confused.
us. They just want to listen to the podcast.
Well, because you people keep talking about the GIF wars, and they're like, no, I can't jump in on that now.
The eternal GIF
Everyone
wars.
can jump in on a GIF war. It's open to everyone.
So come tell us what you do want to talk about. So we can clearly talk about fantasy sports or
One of
sports
us can.
fantasy. No, I'm talking about the Klingon Federation or the Gondorian, versus orcs. So the Hobbit team got creamed this year, so that was no surprise. But
they should do pretty good at golf, in my opinion. Hobbits, as long as they don't start getting distracted by food in the middle.
It's the hairy feet, right? So, yeah.